Welcome back, everyone, to the Hot Mix, an InstruTech podcast. I'm Anthony.
And I'm Maurice.
And today, I am so excited, if you can't already tell.
He's very excited.
We have one of my favorite people in the world here, who's also a Buffalo Bills fan, which is amazing, Miss Tanya.
Yeah, nice. Woo! Tanya, thank you so much for being on. We certainly appreciate you. We are doing this remote. This is one of our very first remote podcasts with a guest.
Yes.
Usually we have people in the studio, but Tanya was gracious enough to accept our invite so she could be on camera with us. And we're going to talk about some very important things for the asphalt industry. But first, before we go there, I'd just like to give a little bit more information for people who might not know Tanya, or maybe it's the first time.
Which would be very rare.
Yes, a lot of people know Tanya. But Tanya Nash is Director of Engineering at Asphalt Testing Solutions and Engineering, otherwise known as ATS, right? That's what most people know that company by. Over the last 24 years, she's worked at the University of Florida. Go Gators.
Woo! Alligator Alley.
the Florida DOT and engineering consulting labs and contractors. She has a diverse set of experience, contribute to a unique perspective on materials research and asphalt pavement construction. Tanya graduated from the University of Florida, obviously, and licensed engineer in both Florida and Alabama. I did not know about Alabama, so that's interesting. I will have to find out why Alabama. When she's not working, Tanya loves training martial arts, so watch out. Do not make her mad. And playing soccer with her husband, which is awesome. And daughter. Her bucket list includes traveling around the world to find the perfect craft beer, which is like right here.
Amazing. You're an amazing person in the industry. You're an amazing person personally. Thank you so much for being here.
Personally,
just give us a little bit of just kind of an overview of ATS, what you do, what the company does, just so everybody kind of knows.
Well, sure. Thank you guys, especially from the bottom of our heart. We love you guys. You know that we fangirl every time we see you guys. We post pictures with you, so we're very, very excited to be associated with this podcast. ATS, as they were describing, is we're a third-party testing lab, but we test everything that asphalt touches, pretty much. Everything from crude oil all the way up through forensics, so cradle to grave is really the best way to explain it. Our unique perspective of being located on an asphalt producer's plant site gives us a little bit more of a feeling for, what works, what doesn't, the things to try, and how to upscale out of the lab and into the plant and into the construction world firsthand. So that's kind of, the things that we like to do and experiment, and not to mention that we like to cheer for the Bills.
That's right.
And cheer for the Gators.
And the Gators, of course. Can't forget the Gators.
That's excellent. No, your lab is now nationally known thanks to your marketing team, you being out and being the face of ATS. And I can't say enough about Tanya and the conversations we've had professionally and personally. I know Tanya from going to a lot of trade shows.
Yeah, with that being said, though, I think you're being approachable and willing to talk through some of these issues, maybe from all levels, right? From people that just joined in the industry all the way up to, people at your same level, is kind of a good reason why we want to talk about the topics that we did today. And so we're going to cover a lot of the roles and responsibilities of the lab and the plant, kind of translating the lab results to what we see out of the plant, right? Kind of the technology and tools that you use at ATS and that we see out in the industry. And then a lot of the training that you'll get to kind of make those things work and the application behind it. So I think that's kind of how we'll roll with it today.
Right.
And, Maurice, you can go ahead and just kind of dive in with some of your questions.
Yeah. So, since you're basically a conduit between the plant and the lab, and the lab, has to start there with testing to make sure that everything you're going to go produce checks all the boxes. That's a major part of the lab that when you get out there, you're not going to find you're not getting density, or you put too much AC on so it bleeds. All those things are kind of controlled by the lab. So from your point of view, what other roles does the lab play in that spectrum? What other things can the lab do to help the plant produce a great mix?
Well, I think that's a very good point. I think one of the clarifications I might add is we don't necessarily control, as that mix goes out, we're not controlling, hey, this needs to be exactly at this, and we're the ones that are turning that knob and pushing the button. I think our responsibility from a lab standpoint is in the beginning, you're telling them, hey, this is a perfect scenario. This is what you guys can produce, and this is where we would like to be. And then we could do a gut check. That's our quality control, right? We pull the mix from the plant and we say, hey, how close did we get to that perfect scenario? And are we going to be within a window of acceptable, right? And so there's a translation between that of being able to say, hey, everything's controlled down to 1/10 of a gram. So things are being produced in tons. And the idea that if I'm a little bit out of what I absolutely want it to be, it's not the end of the world, right? I mean, to try and mimic a gigantic machine that is out there in the producing mix and try to push that into a tiny little bowl that we decided that, hey, this is what all those tonnages should look like. It's just unrealistic, and it's amazing that we get as close as we do.
Yeah, that is amazing. It kind of reminds me of, you ever seen the movie Aladdin?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. At the end where the genie gets put into the little lamp.
Yeah.
And it goes, a big genie into a tiny little living space. It's kind of the same thing. You're looking at this plant thinking, okay, how do we produce this? I'm sorry, I have kids. I watch Aladdin like every day.
That was more of the voiceover that she used that got me.
Yeah, that's my favorite part of the whole movie.
That's really.
It is. And I think the biggest hurdle that a lot of people have is just the idea that I need it to be this number. And when it's not exactly that number, people start panicking. And they're like, no, it's got to be There's a window of just feel good comfort that they've got to be willing to accept, right? And we're never going to get to match exactly what that big giant machine out the window is producing. But we can get as close as possible, and we can mimic as much as we hope that we can. But it is just one of those things that's just not going to match. So we got to take into account a little bit of wiggle room on everything that we do. And to understand what that wiggle room means is really kind of that gap, I think, is what makes the successful runs happen versus the unsuccessful ones.
So when it comes down to like moving past the roles and responsibilities of what each does, if you're looking at actually the challenges, some of the challenges you may have, especially one that you probably see a ton in producing in the plant what you're doing in the lab. So what solutions can you offer just as a company overall, just to say, hey, this is how we can provide more repeatability in your testing in the lab so that it translates and can be effectively produced in the plant?
Well, the canned answer is test. The realism is go out and test production mix, right? If you're going to look at something and you're trying to really compare the processes that you're doing in your labs and you're responsible for helping out that mix, go test them. Because you don't know how far off you are until you actually do that.
Okay. And Tanya, just being from the manufacturing side and not knowing your role as well as you do, is it easy to get mix from the plant? I mean, can you fire that thing up and just say, hey, give me about 10,000 pounds of it, or do you have to wait till it's in full production to get the plant to produce you some mix so you can test?
I would say that is well, it depends. It's like my favorite answer of asphalt ever is it depends, because it just depends on how busy the plant is. If the plant is constantly producing, and if they are an asphalt producer that has a bunch of work, they're constantly going to have mix available. We are lucky enough to be part of one of those groups that produce every single day. A couple of the plants are day and night. And so at any given point, I say, hey, I need a bucket of XYZ. Then I can actually go out and get somebody to sample and run.
Gotcha. Okay.
So let me just, if I was painting a scenario here and, the lab was getting this result, the plant was getting this result, couldn't find that common ground, and, they both looked at each other and just said like, well, it's not my fault. It's not your fault. Do they just say it's asphalt or?
Oh my God. You went for the low hanging fruit.
How do we do it?
It's the It's the asphalt. Yeah.
So sometimes that's it, right? It's just, my point is there's just variables sometimes that you're not going to be able to recreate in both places.
Yeah, absolutely. And we usually call those the ghost in the machine moments. And yeah, there's certain things that the plant will do that just we don't know why it's doing that, and vice versa. So that it's not really always a single-sided fault to point to. It just depends on what is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, so which is a great starting point for my next point is like talking about variability in materials, right? So if you're having a bunch of variability, are there any specific reasons or things that you point to immediately? Like, this is my top 3 checklist of things that I'm looking at to say, hey, well, let's start here.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is your QA program like? Your QA QC program like? So there's plant related and there's lab related. So from a perspective of the plant, how are you handling your materials? Are you checking them every load that they come in? When you're calibrating the plant, are they all your checks and balances that you would normally do? Same thing applies on your lab. You can have the best technicians in the world and they're testing, but if your equipment is not maintained and you're not calibrated, then what does it matter if they're doing everything perfect on something that doesn't read correctly? So you got to make sure that you are always up to date on calibrations. They have very good relationships with your manufacturers and make sure that they understand what you're seeing so that they are always there to be able to back you up and help you the best that they can.
Absolutely. Tanya, let's turn the page and go talk about the technology and tools that you yourself or you've seen with your experience that kind of help you kind of meet those goals that we just talked about. You know, the partnership between the lab and the plant. What is it that you think is helpful? What softwares are there? What new technology can you point to that kind of helps you achieve these goals?
Sure. I think that, everything that we use on the roadway, for instance, our gauges, the Newton gauges, the PQI, all of those type of systems that have developed, I'm going to say relatively new, only in the sense of asphalt's been around for centuries. So in the ideas that, those kind of ideas that come up through something like that, the IR bars, the intelligent compaction, every step that we take in order to be able to kind of really refine and be able to move in the right direction of saying, no, I know exactly what was there, when it was there, and how I did it. So the plant, the moisture sensors that are on the plant, moisture is a massive deal for a plant. Water is weight. So everything is done in weight and temperatures. Temperature sensors, there's certain areas of the plant we can't get to for temperature gauges because it's so hot. But we don't know how to temp that. It would be great to know. From a lab side, it's really hard to be able to mimic that plant. If I had king for a day, queen for a day, I would have that mini version of a functional asphalt plant in my breezeway outside and be able to say, oh, I'm going to dump into some cold feed bins and run it right into a pug mill and be able to say, hey, this is exactly how that was set up. And I have a mini little wrap collar. I got everything going on. So I can be able to say, I've produced it as close as possible to what I'm seeing out there.
Yeah. So one quick question in the technology sector, just as a response to what you were just saying there. Do you feel in the 24 years, right? 24 years?
Yeah, sure. Ish.
That you've been, do you think that technology has come a significant way, or do you feel like we've made steps, but we have a long way to go in the asphalt world?
I think we go in bounds. Like we don't ever really I don't feel like we ramp in a continuous way. I think that we make these leaps and then we all look at it, we ponder over it, we scrutinize over it, and that lasts for a certain amount of time. So then there's like a small acceptance portion, and then we leap again. And so I think that there's certain portions of it that yes, we have still room to grow. Like when do we get away from coring and punching holes into the pavement and just relying on the density gauges that are out there, that they're really without having to come back to recalibrate? Is there something that we can do to prevent all the actual punching of the cores and making holes, which are causing the potential for failure points in the pavement? So there's different things out there that I think are still out there to explore. There's always different ways to look at material, like really dive into the science of the material from the lab perspective and the research side. And then, the thing about asphalt is that it just never ends, right? It's always needed, and it is a very complex thing that I think we can continue to grow with.
Like a good friend of mine always says, control your controllables.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That's your line.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think we can control, and one of the things that you and I have talked about in the past, Tanya, is our training.
Yes.
And the reason why I think that's the one thing we can control is because we can set processes, we can set people up for success. I love that line. So what do you think in terms of training when it comes to cross training, like having everybody kind of understanding different roles? What do you think some of the tools to create that culture? Because I feel like culture is a big way that you have to have the buy-in, right? For people to want to do more than what they were potentially like hired on to do. So what do you think some of those tools are that we can get companies to buy into that culture?
I think it's the end goal, right? I mean, I truly believe that everyone that's in this industry is looking to try and get that end quality, the product out there saying like, look, that was what I did, and look how beautiful that looks, and that's holding up. You want that pride in putting your name on it, and then, hey, that's my company, and I was part of that crew. I think part of it is being able to trust your people to make the right decisions because they are informed enough to do so. So if you cross-train, the plant certainly does not need to know how to make a mixed design, right? But they do need to understand the constraints of what the mixed designers are up against to make it the way that the plant wants it, right? So, and the vice versa. So the designer needs to know what are the limitations of the belt feeder, what are the limitations of the slots that you can feed out of. If you can't get below a certain percentage, I can't design below a certain percentage. So they've got to really understand each other a little bit more in each other's language so that they can communicate better. And then at the end of the day, everything's running a lot smoother and they're more willing to work together.
In kind of summary and just kind of the final thoughts of everything that we've covered today, one of the things and our mission here at the Hot Mix is, we want to kind of let people know why that this is an attractive industry for maybe the younger generation kind of thinking about what they're going to do and what they're going to study and how they're going to move forward with their life. What would you say, after all the experience that you have, is the one reason why you would say, hey, take a look at the asphalt industry, take a look at the materials testing industry for a career path?
Yeah, well, for me, besides the people, which I absolutely love, I think really what I fall back on is the people. I've never met a person in this industry that you just go, God, why are we here? I mean, the industry, the personnel are they're so welcoming, and no matter what level you're at, they just have so much to give. And I from a overall industry standpoint, there is never a day that you do the same exact thing. And every single day you have a different challenge, a new thing to learn, somebody else to talk to. It's just new every single day.
I do have one more thing I'd like to ask Tanya. So I'm going to go back to the bio here real quick. And there was that last line I read that said her bucket list includes traveling around the world to find the perfect craft beer. So I would be remiss to not mention that you are no stranger to podcasts. And there's a podcast we love that you are on as well called The Boozy Blondes. And it's a good friend of ours as well, Molly, that is one of the hosts. So can you tell us how many craft beers have you tried?
Oh.
Just give me a number. Are we talking hundreds, or are we talking thousands?
We're probably in the thousands. Between the beer festivals and everything else that we've gone to, we're probably in the thousands. We seek out a brewery everywhere we go.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you haven't checked out the Boozy Blondes, please do. You can find them on any app. They have a ton of information. They travel all over the world as well, drinking wine and having fun. And they got great stories from their travels. And that's a podcast I do listen to. And I love that we know them personally. So thank you so much for that.
Well, Tanya, thank you so much for joining here. I know we've told you that about 15 times now, but I can't thank you enough.
Yes.
I know Maurice can't thank you enough.
Absolutely.
And obviously this is going to be great for everybody that tunes in and watches it. So thank you, everybody who's watching. We really appreciate you. Remember to like and subscribe, and just remember to always keep it hot.
Keep it real.
Keep it real hot.
Thank y'all so much for watching. If you'd like more information on ATS, please visit Asphalttesting.info, or you can use the information on the screen to reach out to Tanya Nash directly.